Hello everyone, welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about the state management in a Flutter, which is the GetX package. And it is the most liked package in PubDev. And I'm going to quickly guide you through what contained in this GetX. Basically, you contains route management, state management, and also the dependency management. So I will probably divide this entire series to 3 parts of the video. So in today's video, we are focused on route management. If you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find a Flutter UI from scratch tutorial and Flutter tutorial for beginners and a Dart programming language tutorial. And also this series is Flutter state management tutorial. So I hope you'll learn and how to build a complete Flutter app from scratch. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So first, let's open our Visual Studio Code, and here I write some code, and I will walk through those examples. And explain to you what it is and how you can use it. So first, we're going to talk about the route management in GetX. So in GetX, we have 2 types of route. So one is you can use navigation without like a nan, and another one is a navigation with nan. So we will first go to this. Let's open our emulator and Visual Studio Code. And as you see, we can use get.to and we navigate to another route. In the Flutter, you can use a navigator of context, and .push, you push to a new route, right? So in GetX, you can simply just use this get.to and you go to the next screen, so which is another a page in here. So for this first button, using this get to next page. So when I click, I will navigate to a new page, right? You will see in the new page, we will have the option to go back to previous page, because in here we use the get to, and you will see we also have this go back button in our app bar, because we are in the second of our navigation stack. So as you see, I dropped this picture, and here is our home page, and we're using the get.to. So this is our route stack, and we are in the second place of our route stack. So if we're using get.back, we will pop this stack out of this route stack, and we will back to our home. So this is we using get.to, this one, get.to to the next page, and we can use get.back to back to our previous page. And also we have this get.off. So what's different between get.to and get.off? And back to this image, if you're using the get.off, so for example, if you are currently in your home route and you call this get.off, so it basically will remove this home route and you navigate to this next page, right? So you don't have chance to go back to your previous route, because the home page already replaced by your current page. So for example, in here, we can back to our previous page, right? Because we're using get.to, and if we're using this get.off to the next page, you see we don't have any like a go back button on our app bar, and also we click this back button, it doesn't work, right? So in this back button, we simply just call this get back function, but it didn't work because you see this image, and our currently route is in the first place on our route stack. And so what's the get of all? So the get of all is, for example, currently you are in the home route, right? So you're using get to, and you push this route stack, and you call this get to again, right? So currently you are in the third place in this route stack, and you call this get off. You will remove this get to, these two route. So you currently will replace this entire route stack with your currently route, like this image. Those three will be removed, right? And your home page will be replaced with the currently page. So that's the difference between the get off, all, and get off. So next we're going to look into what's the attribute inside this get to method. Right. So that's back to Visual Studio Code, and you see here we're using another widget function instead of widget, right? And you see the Mindmap, we're using this get to, and we're passing this next screen widget. So we navigate to next screen page, right? So the reason here I use this widget function, because using widget function is instead of widget, so fully guarantees the widget, and it is a controller will be removed from the memory when they are no longer used. So highly recommend you using this approach. And also for this get to, we have another attribute, for example, the transition. So if you comment out the transition, so by default, when you navigate to the other page, sorry, we need to restart this application. When you navigate to the other page, by default, you will pop from bottom to top, right? You see the new page will start from bottom to top. So we can make it slowly. So we set this duration to 1 second. So when I click this get.to, you'll see our page is from bottom to top, and we can change the transition. So here, and I define the transition to right to left. So I save it, and when I click this button again, you'll see our next page will show from right to left, right? So we can set these transition. So another one is we can set these curves. So what's the curve? The curve is some animation you can use to control the behavior. So for example, we have a lot of curves animation, and here I'm using the ease in out. So let's see this one. So it will slow at first and faster at the end, and you see we have a different kind of like curves, and you can try different ones and to see which one meet your requirement. So back to our mind map, and after that we have another attribute which is called argument. So for the argument, and the argument can be used both in this without name route and also the name route. So the argument existing in both routes. However, the parameter, so the parameter only existing in the name route. So we'll talk this argument first. And back to Visual Studio Code. For this, we're parsing the argument. So when you move your mouse, you will see the argument actually accept this dynamic type. So it can be anything. So you can pass like this, the map, and even now it's allowed. So let's see. And here we're passing the data to our next page, right? So the argument will be hello world from get.to. So, and let's check our next screen page. So in the next screen page, we're using these get.arguments to get these argument back. So let's save. and when I click this one, you will see we will receive argument, which is hello world from get.to, right? So for example, if we comment out this one and we save it, and we back to our previous page and click again, we will see a noun, you see, because we didn't pass anything. So if you didn't pass anything, so by default it will be none. Another thing you need to notice is we actually can return some data back to our previous page. So for example, when I click this get2, so I using this await keyword, make this on press asynchronized, because I'm waiting for the data which from the next screen page, and you will see in this get.back we have this result attribute. So I pass this string like a success to indicate we success in payment or something, or login in our second page. So this result actually receive a string type. So you can pass this one and back to previous page. So in here I will receive this success. So let's open our terminal and let's see. I navigate to our second page. Let's go command out load transition. And when I click this get.to next screen, and I pass the argument to the next screen, and when I back, I will have this success indicate those operation success, right? Because I return this success in this get.back. Another one is this close overflow inside this .back. So by default it's false, right? Suppose you have a lot of dialog or snack bar or button shift, you want to close before you navigate to the other page, right? So if you set this to true, you call this get.back, and you will close all the overlayers, right? So let's back to this diagram, and we finish this argument in both route. So next we will talk about the name route. So let's back to Visual Studio Code, and the name route means you have a name, right? You give this route name. You're using this get.to name, and this name will link to the next screen, right? And you will have a, for example, you must wrap everything inside your GetMaterial app. So for example, when you use this library, and first you click this installing tab. So you add this dependence like this. So in your pub/spec YAML file, you add this dependence, and then you're going to add this library, right? Import this package get in the library, and next is you need to wrap your application inside this GetMaterial app. So before GetMaterial app, we're using like a normal material app. However, if you want to use those route management, state management in this GetX, you must change your material app to GetMaterial app, right? So inside this GetMaterial app, we have something a different attribute. For example, this get pages. So the get page is kind of like a route map. So you have this route name, and you map to this page. So when I call this get.to name with our name, so you will see we'll get to the next screen. So I think this should be, sorry, I make a mistake. This should be a name route. It should be the next page, right? I'll send for those as well. Okay, so this is using the name route. So we have this home route which indicate we are in our navigation page. So we have slash next route indicate we are in a next screen page, right? So for example, when I click this get.toName to the next screen, I will navigate to next screen. So you'll see here, in here we're using get.toName, and so let's see, we will go to the next route, and also we have an option to go back to previous route because we're using this get.to, right? You can also use get off name route, but when you use this get off name, and you don't have chance to go back to previous route. So for example, when I click this one, I don't have chance to go back to previous route. And we can check this diagram again. So if you're using the get2, so you have chance to go back to your previous page. So if you're using the get off or get off name, so you will replace your currently route with those route. And however, if you're using get off all and get off all name, so you will clear all the route stack and only keep these currently route in your route stack. And also, as you see, the argument works in both routes. So for example, I have argument in this get.to, right? We have argument, and also we have argument in this get off, and we have argument in this get2name and get off name. So argument actually exist in the both routes, and however the parameter only exists in the name routes. I'm going to show you how to use this parameter in the name route. If you're trying to use the parameter in your name route, you will see we have this route table, right? And we specify this route. So for example, if you are trying to use the parameter, you have two different type of approach. So the first one is you using this quotation mark, and you append your key and value in your URL. So after that, you're using this get parameters ID or name, so you can get those 1, 2, 3 and this razor, which is my name, and in your second page, right? And another way is you using this symbol. So the ID here is actually a placeholder, so you will map to this 1, 2, 3. So you can also get this ID by this 1, 2, 3, right? So this one is what you write in your like a route mapping. For example, here, so you slash your ID, right? So this and here, and so for here you have a get.to, right? So you have get.toName and you slash 1, 2, 3, and in this way it will actually map this ID to this 1, 2, 3. So we can save in this case and go to our next screen, and we're going to get these data. I think it's called parameter, right? Parameters, and we can access our ID. So let's save, and I need to restart. So here I think using this get.toName, right? So you see we have this get.toName, and which is 1, 2, 3. So let's save. We actually map this ID, so with our 1, 2, 3. So okay, maybe I need to refresh. Oh, sorry, I changed in the wrong place, and it should be here as well. So let's save again, and we're using this get.toName, 1, 2, 3, and I click this one, you will see we have a argument would be 1, 2, 3. Actually, this should be parameters. Okay, so let's save. So you see, we actually retrieve this ID because we're using this placeholder for our ID, right? So another way, you just using this normal, you remove the placeholder and you're using another approach, which you append the ID, right, equal to 1, 2, 3. And in this case, you can also get this ID. So let's place here and here. We go back to previous page and we save. When I click this get.toName, you'll see we can also get this parameter ID, right? So there are two approaches. We can get these parameter. If you have some knowledge in web, so you will know those. Also, if you have multiple parameter you need to pass into your route, so you can actually create a parameter variable. You store this into a map, so you just pass this entire map to this parameter attribute. So you see, when I move your mouse in this get.to, we have this parameters attribute which receive this map object, right? So you could do this way as well. So the last one I want to talk is we can have a middleware in our GetX, which is this routing callback attribute in our GetX material app. So in here, so inside our get material app, we have another attribute called routing callback. So we will receive this routing object, and you can check if routing currently if equals to the next route. So for example, if I want to open the advertisement in our next route, so we could using this callback. So for example, watch my console. So when I go to our next route, okay, the reason we didn't print out this statement because we actually navigate to a very specific route. So we could delete this parameter, right? And we try again. So we delete those parameters and we save again. So this time when I click this get.toName, we will see this open ads in our console. So let's clear it and click this get to right. You see we have this open ads, right? Because this route actually map with match this slash next route. So you can add some like a listener or any callback inside this routing callback to do your own business logic. So I think that's all for today's lesson. I hope you will have a clear understanding for the route management in this GetX. So for the next video, I'm going to consider for those state management and dependency management. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, so thumb up my content and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I will see you in next video. Hello my friends, welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about the state management in GetX. We have talked about the route management in GetX in our previous lesson. I will put a link in the description below, so feel free to check that part of the video if you haven't watched yet. Also, if you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find a Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, and Flutter tutorial for beginners and also Dart programming tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel and sum up my content. Also open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. In GetX, there are two types of state management. One is simple state management, another is reactive state management. So first, I will talk about the React state management, then we'll back to the simple state management. So for the React state management, first you need to declare a reactive variable. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code and also open our Android emulator. And I have write some example. I will walk through with you guys and give you an explanation what's going on in the sample code here. So first, let's go back to this Mindmap. In GetX, we have three ways to declare a reactive variable. So the first way you using Rx type. For example, Rx string, Rx boolean, and Rx int, Rx double. So another is you using a generic type. You have this Rx, and you're using this bracket. And the last one is you add the obx at the end of your variable. You have an initial value. For example, here, let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. So here is our first approach to declare a GetX variable. The reason we make this final because this one actually is a object. So we have this object type and we can access to this variable using dot values here. These types are predefined by GetX, so you can just use if you know what the type you're going to use, so you can use this way, but I didn't recommend for this approach. So let's come our second approach. So let's open comment. So for the second approach, using this Rx with this bracket. So inside the bracket, you're going to have your generic type. So for example, here I'm using the Boolean type, which can Dart SDK. So we have integer type, and we have a double type, number type, and this type, and map type as well. And what's more, we can define our custom type. So for example, here we have our user type. So the user just our custom defined class with the name attribute and the age attribute. So we also have this constructor with those two name parameters. This name by default will be empty. The age by default will be 0. So back to this reactive state management.tar, and you see we define this user variable and we mark it as a final because you declare this one, so you cannot change it. This object address, but you can change the value inside this object. And we have a default value for this user, so I give it my name and my age for this one, and because we have a default value, so I can remove those as well. So it's highly recommend you have a default value for those reactive variable since we are using now safety Flutter version, right? So it's better to give a default value. For example, here we have a default user and empty map for these my map and empty list for these items, and we have a 0 for the number, false for the boolean. So this is our second approach to declare reactive variable. And the last one is this approach. So let's comment it out. So the last approach is you just add this .obs at the end of your initial value, and you make this a variable observable. So when this value change, and your UI will automatically update. And I'm going to give you an example how the UI will automatically update when you changing the value. So for here, we're using this count variable, right? And we mark it as observable. And actually, it will show on the screen. Initial value will be 0. So we scroll down, you see I declare a function called increment. We'll get these value since it's an object. So we're going to access its int value by using dot value, right? So this statement will equal to count value equals count value plus 1, right? So we're just using this shortcut. So we will increase this count variable. And also we scroll down, you see I'm using this one, OBX. So what is OBX? Back to the Mindmap. The OBX actually receive another function which take a widget as it is return type, and you have your observable variable inside the widget. So when you variable change, you will automatically rebuild your view, right? So in here, we return this text widget inside our OBX. So when you move your mouse, you'll see this OBX actually receive the function for it is a builder. Right, so we're going to return this text widget, and we have this count variable, right? And we can access to its value using dot value, right? So if you move this counter, so by default it's rx int, right? It's an object, so we're going to use the value to get its actual value, which is int. And scroll down, we have this flattening action button. So when you click it, you will call this increment method, which we define here. We will increase the value. So let's check. When I click this button, this number will increase. You will see. So that's pretty simple. We don't using any like a stateful widget in here, but we actually achieve the same result as we using the stateful widget, because GetX make these variable observable. So every time the value change, it will only rebuild this text widget. So in this approach, we actually make this counter app without using any stateful widget, right? So we just using this OBX and also this observable variable. Next, I'm going to show you how can we update those custom class, right? So back to Visual Studio Code. Here actually I define these user class, right? I have this name and age. So for our reactive state mention.dar, actually I declare here as well. So I will comment out this part to make my name turn to uppercase. So there are two approach to update custom class. So I'm going to show you the first approach. Okay. Okay, here is the first approach. I'm going to comment it out. And here you will see my name and my age. Because we are a custom class, right? So how are we going to update the value? For example, in this case, when I press this button, I want to make all my name capital letters and also increase my age. So if you didn't use this approach, for example, you're using this approach like what we did for our counter, it won't work because for the custom one, you actually need to use something called update, which will receive your own instance and you update that instance. So for example, we declare the user, right? The user variable, and we give it initial value, and we're using this OBX to render our name by using user.value.name. So we are not using user.name.value. We're using user.value.name because we make this entire class observable. So if you may want to use something called user.name.value, that means you only make this variable observable. So you are not making this entire class observable. I will talk that in later. So for this case, we can using user.value.name to access my name. And we can use, and another approach is you can using this user, and you have this bracket, and you can also access to its value in this case. So I'm going to click this button, and you're going to see my name will turn to uppercase and my age will be increased. So let's see. You see, actually this line of code works. The reason it works because we receive our user, which is this one, and it receives itself and it updates itself, right? It update to uppercase and update its age. So some of you may have a question like, I can update the value using this shortcut. Can I do in here? So the answer is no, you cannot do in here. So for example, I restart and click this button. You see only my name tend to uppercase, but this one doesn't work because in this time we observable its entire class. So we can now using this shortcut. So we need to manually update its value by changing to this. It will work now. So the next, I'm going to show you if I make those attributes inside this class observable. So I will comment this out, and so here I have a user class, right? And we have this name and age, and I make it observable by add this OBX. So in our state react state.tar, and I will comment out this one, and I comment out this. So this means I only observable the variable inside this user class, right? And so in this way, we don't have this update method. So since we are not observable this entire class, and we're going to uncomment this out. We only watch our its value. So you'll see here, we first have this user, and we're using .name to access its name, and also then we're using this .value. So it's different than before. We were using user.value.name, and in this case, if you want to watch individual attribute, we're using user.name.value, right? So in this one, and we're going to scroll down. So here, and we're going to make a comment and comment out this one. So we're using user.name.value. Okay, so when I press the button, you will see these razor tend to uppercase, and also this integer will increase my age, right? And also we could use this shortcut because we observable on the individual variable, right? We not observable for this entire class, so we could using this approach. That's for this reactive state management. So I hope you now have a clear understand how to use and when to use it. So back to Visual Studio, and let's comment out this one. We're going to open this one. So we make this entire class observable again. So we comment out this. There are another approach to update the class, right? So first we're going to change it back to normal class, and we observable the entire user class, right? So for here, we declare user class and make it observable. For update, we could using another approach. By using this approach, you're going to pass the entire new object. So let's comment this out and comment out this. Okay, so let's save. So by using this approach, when I click this button, you will see the name will turn to uppercase, but the age will turn to 0. Because by default, you see our age will be 0. So if you're using the second approach, you're passing another object. So let's see. When I click, you see actually my name turn to uppercase, but the age will turn to 0, and you won't increase. So if you know what you're doing and exactly the variable or object you're going to use, so you can use the second approach. So otherwise, I still recommend you using the first approach. So you can using actual like a method or do some your business logic in here. So this is another stuff I want to mention. Okay, let's back to our Mindmap. You will see I write this usage. We have this OBX and also GetX Controller. So if you want to using those two, you must contain observable variable. Seems like you have these three type of variable inside those two. So if you want to using GetBuilder, you don't need to have this observable variable because we are using this simple state management. This is another approach provided by GetX, so you can simple management your state. And next I'm going to talk about this. So let's back to Rich Code. And here I write those two class. So for the first one, if you want to use this simple state management, you must declare your controller for the class. So for example, here I make my own controller class, which extends the GetX controller, and I make this variable, so this counter variable, and also I declare a method which increase this counter. But also, so the most important part is this update, and you will access to this update only inside this GetX controller. So you must extend this controller, and you can access this update method by which to update your variable, and you will notify the UI to change the UI. So here I will comment out this reactive state management, and I will uncomment out this simple state management. So let's open our Android emulator. We might need to restart our application. Okay, here you see we have this simple state management, and we only have this counter variable shown here. And because you see, we're going to walk you through what's inside this simple state management class. So it's a stateless class, and we only have this GetBuilder. You see here I'm using GetBuilder. You will notice for this simple state management, we don't use any like .obx or any of those three to declare variable. So this counter are just the normal variable have this integer type, right? So in here, we're using this GetBuilder. We have this initial attribute, and which receive the controller. So we're going to create this controller by using its constructor, and we pass into this GetBuilder, right? And then inside this builder attribute, we can access to this controller. So here I will call it controller with small case c, and we have this text widget, and we can using controller.counter to access our counter variable, right? Basically, this widget will show this 0 on our screen. And also we have this floating action button. When I click this floating action button, I actually will call this increment method inside our simple state controller, right? So the reason I'm using this uppercase class.to.increment, because we actually declare this static variable controller get2, and you can using this one. So if I comment out this, we don't have a chance to get this method. So we were using something called get.find. We're going to find our controller. Yeah, get.find. We're going to pass the controller. Sorry, it will be here. The increment, right? You see, we can access to this increment by using this one. And let's open our console. You'll see first we have this material controller, which is this get material app. Then we have our own controller, because in this get builder we create our controller, so we controller load into the memory. So that means all those method or variable load into the memory. So we could using this get.find to find our controller, which in our memory, and we could call it this increased method. So when I click this button, the counter will increase actually. So let's see. And since we have another approach, so we could uncomment this out. You see we declare a static variable 2. So we could using another way to find our increment, get2.increment. Sorry, I need to save this first. And using .increment. Sorry, it should be controller to .increment. You will see when I press this hot reload, because we separate our view and controller, actually it's still A, because the number we store is inside this controller. So we must press this restart to clear our state. So you start from 0. Okay, you see our controller have been cleared, and when I press this button, the number increased. Yeah, and so that's two approach you can use to call this function inside the controller. And that's the approach you can use for this simple state management for this get builder. Okay, so back to here. And also in order to give you the example what's the GetX this widget. So this one actually I write something here. We have this we can access to the controller, and we can access to its standard value. So here I declare another variable. I make it observable. So I have a mention in here. If you want to using this GetX, you must have a observable variable inside those two. Let's see. My name shown here. Using this controller.name.value. So you'll see here. So when you move your mouse, you'll also see we have a initial this attribute. So because we already initial our controller in this get builder, so we don't need to initial in here. So you are using the same controller from the memory. Okay, so I think that's all for today's video, and we have a talk about this simple state management and reactive state management in this GetX. And however, there are more topics related to the controller and also the dependency management. So I will talk them in a later video. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel and sum out my content and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. And after we finish this entire GetX series, I will using this GetX package to create a Flutter app from the scratch. So I will teach you how to separate your view, your controller, and your business logic, and make the complete the application from the scratch. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. Hello my friend, welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about the GetX controller. We have learned GetX reactive state management and simple state management in our last lesson. So if you are new here, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you'll find a GetX tutorial for beginners. Include the route management, state management, and also you can find a Flutter tutorial for beginners and Dart tutorial for beginners. After you finish that, you can watch this Flutter UI from scratch tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum out my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. And I will going to make a complete Flutter app after we finish this GetX tutorial, and we're going to create the app using this GetX package. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, in today's lesson, we are focused on the life cycle of this GetX controller. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code. Here I write some code and I will walk through of those examples and give you explanation how those code works. So first, as you see in our main.dar, I just return our GetX controller example, and this is this one. In view.dar, we have our GetX controller example. First, we're going to return this get material app, and then we have this scaffold. Inside scaffold, we have this app bar. As you see here, the app bar contains this GetX controller, this text widget, and after that we have this body attribute. We have this center widget, which conclude this GetX widget only show the count of variable. And after that, we have this floating action button. Basically, will increase this number here. And also, we have this controller.dar. And here we define a controller which extends the GetX controller. So back to this Mindmap. First, if you're going to use the GetX controller, you must create your custom class which extends the GetX controller. So in here, we create this controller class which extends the GetX controller. And in here, this controller can be anything. Like the class name can be anything. It could be my controller, right? And so for symbol, I just make this controller, but you can have a custom name. Okay. And after that, we declare a variable. This count variable, we make it observable. The reason I make it observable, because in here we're using this GetX, right? Remember in last lesson, if you're going to use the OBX widget or this GetX widget. Inside the variable must observable, so we're using this observable. If you using the normal variable, you can use this get builder. So first we're going to use this observable variable. After that, we can change to normal variable, and we can achieve the same result. So here I declare this observable counter, and I create this increment method, which increase this variable every time when I click this button. And also I have this clear counter method, which will clear this count when I dispose this controller, usually on close this method. And don't worry, I will talk this later. So first, let's focus on this counter and this increment method, and back to our view.dar, and we separate our logic and the UI. So for the UI, we just simple display this count variable. We initial our controller, right? And for this controller, we can access to its count variable. We could using this controller.count. You see when I move my mouse, you will see this count actually are as integer type. So we need to use this dot value to get it the integer type, right? And we display on the screen, and we have this floating action button. When I press this button, this get will find this controller and call this increment method. The reason I can use this syntax because I put this controller into the memory. I can just click this one and you will see the count increase. Okay, that's back to the Mindmap. And next I'm going to talk about the life cycle of this GetX controller. So for its life cycle, and we have three methods inside the GetX controller. So the first one would be onInit method, another one would be onReady, and last one would be onClose. So back to Visual Studio Code in this controller.dar. So by default, if you create this controller in line 24, right, we create this controller, and this onInit method will be called. After that, this onReady will be called. And if I remove this page with this controller associate, and the onClose method will be called. So here let's open our emulator, and I will clear this console, and I click this restart button. So just watch these careful. Okay, you see, first we're going to see this GetMaterial controller, because we're using this GetMaterial app. This GetMaterial controller usually will handle some route or theme. So in line 24, we create our own controller. So let's this line we create our controller, and this onInit method will be called, and this onReady will be called as well. Those two methods, right? Because you call this initial method. Back to this view. So another way to make these, you can using this OBX widget, as you see. In this OBX, we didn't have this initial attribute, so we cannot create this controller. But we have another way to do it. So we can, using this line of statement, we declare a final variable, and we're using this get.put, and we put this controller, and then we can, using this variable, also in this floating action button, we can find this controller because they are still in the memory. So you could save that. We're going to restart our application. and you will see because it's outside of this GetMaterial app, so first it will create the instance of our controller, right? So the controller on it has been called. After you log into the screen, this already will be called. So we could press this button. The whole functionality still works. I will talk about this get.poo in dependency management tutorial. So let's comment out this one, and we're using the first approach, which is GetX, and we need to comment this out, and we save again. We may need to restart this application. Okay, we restart this application, and let's go back to this controller.tar. In this onInit method, as you see, we have lots of specific callback we can use inside our onInit. And so the first one will be ever. And let's back to Visual Studio Code. The ever, this method will call every time when this counter change, as you see. So by default, this count will be a 0 when I press this button, and this debug print will print on our console every time I click this button. Okay, and this time I need to restart our application because I want this onInit method called again. If I press this hot reload, it won't call this onInit method because this controller already load into the memory. Right, you see when I click this one, nothing changed, right? But when I click this restart, this onInit method will called. You see our controller onInit been called, so I can press the button and you will see this counter variable will show on our console. So first I press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you will see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So every time this variable change, I can print out its value. And if you have a multiple variable you want to watch, you can use this one, which is called ever or this method, and you actually receive this list of variable. So here I just put this count variable. So basically you do the same function as this ever. So let's restart this application. Okay, let's click this button and you will see this print statement print 5 times because I click 5 times. So this is for this ever and ever or. And another one is this once for the once. So let's comment out this and comment out this, and we need to restart our application. The once will call only the first time when this variable change. So for example, initial value will be 0 and I click once, the value will change to 1, right? And when I click again, the number change, but the print statement didn't print anything. You'll see because it only called once. So depends on your business logic, you can use this kind of function. So let's comment out this one. So the third one would be the bounce. We need to restart this application. So for the debounce, suppose you have this search bar, and when user search something, you want to trigger this search to fetch your backend API after user finish typing. Right? You can use this debounce. We'll wait Like for example here, I only wait 0.8 second, and you can wait like 5 seconds or something more when user typing. So let's restart this one. Okay, so when I first click this one, it didn't print anything. It will print after 1000 milliseconds. So let's see. Click this very fast. You see it will only print when number change to A. Right. Let's check again. 15, right? Because I press very fast. You will wait for 1000 milliseconds. Okay, let's comment out this one. So the next one would be this interval. This one is different. This one it will ignore all changes within 1000 milliseconds. So let's restart our application. Okay, so let's click this button. You'll see the interval. We have 1 and 3, right? And it was 7. So it will ignore all the changes within 1000 milliseconds. So try to try those examples on your own so you can understand it more. Okay, let's comment out this one and we save. So let's back to our view.dar, and we are using this GetX, which is reactive state management in this case. And as we mentioned in our last video, we have a simple state management. So I'm going to uncomment this out. So we're going to change our controller a little bit so we could using this simple state management. So back to this controller, we're going to comment out this observable variable, and we uncomment out this normal variable, right? And we're going to comment out this one. And since we have this normal variable, we need to increase its value every time we call this increment. And after that, we need to call this update method. Remember, we need to extend this GetX controller, then we can access to this update method in the simple state management in GetX. So we're going to comment out this one and open this one, and we can save. And we're going to restart our application. Okay, you see we finished restart application, and we could test it by click this button. The number will increase, so it works. And we change this reactive state management to the simple state management by changing this variable to normal type, right? And using this update method to update the variable. So this is this get builder, how to use the get builder. So remember, if you want to use this get builder, you must using a simple state management. If you want using the reactive state management, you're going to use GetX or this OBX. Okay, let's back to our Mindmap. So next I'm going to talk about this unique ID using this get builder. So let's back to Visual Studio Code. So for example, in here, we have one counter, right? And we can create another counter number. And since we already initialize our controller, so I can remove this one. We are using the same controller in this case, but we're giving this one an ID. So for example, this would be counter 1, right? And this I giving another ID would be counter 2. And in our controller, we're going to comment out this one. and uncomment out this. So let's save. We may need to restart our application. So we have a 2 counter, right? And we're using this get builder. We have 2 counter, and when I press this button, only first counter number will increase. As you see here, I only update this first counter. So let's see. The second counter won't change, right? You see, because I'm using this unique ID to update this widget. And another one is you can using some condition check. For example, here, if this counter is greater than 10, I will stop update. So let's restart our application. And when I click this button, so we could increase from 0 to 9. When you reach to 9 and I click again, the number won't change because we have this condition here. So we will update only when this count number is less than 10. Okay, this is the example of how you can use this unique ID to update only specific widget you want to update. Okay, so next one I'm going to talk about this on-close life cycle. So I drop this picture and I will walk through of this picture and explain to you the life cycle of this on-close. So back to our Visual Studio Code. I'm going to make a little bit change of this view.dar, and here I'm going to comment out these and comment out this button. Okay, let's save, and you will see we have this detail page button, and I'm using this get.to, and I will navigate to this detail page. So in our detail page, we have this get builder. We have this counter 1 and counter 2. So basically, it's the same stuff we talked before. We are using this simple state management. Let's check. You see we can back to our previous page. So here I don't need this second one, so I can comment out this one. And we're going to click our console. So back to this Mindmap. So first we are in our home page, and we're going to restart our application so you can see the console clear. So first we have this get material controller load into memory, because we are in this page which is this GetX Controller example page, and we're using this get material app. So we load this get material controller into the memory. So it's this one, and then we click the button which will navigate us to this detail page. As you see, we have this related button, and when I click, I will navigate to the detail page. So let's click it, and you'll see this console. We navigate to the route which is detail page, and we have this controller has been created and also initialized. So back to this detail page.dar, and so we manually put this controller. Okay, I think we could comment out this one because we manually put this controller. Okay, so let's restart this again. Okay, let's click this button, and we navigate to this detail page, and the controller load into the memory because we're using this one, using this get.put. As you see, we back using this get.to, we load this controller into the memory. So if we have another page, we're using this get.to into our next page. We could using this get.find controller to find our previous page controller, because this time this controller didn't remove from our route stack. We could still access to this controller. However, if you're using get.off, it will replace your current route, right, with your next page. So this means you need to manually put this controller again, because you move this controller out of memory. So you need to put this again, and you can find it using this get.find controller. So let's back to this console. So if I click this go back button, our controller will remove from our memory the on delete will code. So let's see, when I click go back button, and you'll see this controller on delete code, and it will delete from the memory, and we have this on close has been called, right, and this clear count has been called. As you see here, this on close has been called because our controller now moved from the memory. Okay, so now I hope you have a clear understanding of how to use this GetX controller in this GetX package. Okay, I think that's all for today's lesson. We talk about the GetX controller. So for the next video, I'm going to talk about the dependency management in GetX. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. Hello my friend, welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to learn the dependency management inside the GetX. We have learned the route management, the state management, and GetX controller in our previous lesson. So if you are new here, feel free to reach out to my channel page, and you will find a Flutter UI from scratch tutorial and GetX tutorial, also Flutter tutorial and Dart tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum out my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. And in today's lesson, we're going to focus on the dependency management. As you see from this mind map, I have listed out all the topics we're going to cover in this video. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. And first, we're going to talk the dependency management for create the instance inside the GetX package. And we were talking about the getPut, getLazyPut, getPut, asynchronous, and also getCreate and getDelete. So let's open our Visual Studio Code, and as well as the Android emulator. Here I have wrote some code example, and I will walk you through and give you an explanation what it is and how you can use it. So first, as you see from this folder, dependency management folder, I separate our view, controller, and binding, and also some normal class here. And for the class starter, I declare some of the class because I want to show you how can you use this get replace and get lazy replace. So I create an abstract class called base, and then I create this parent class extend the base, and also the child class extend this parent class. So for the controller, we just define a count variable, also make it observable, and we can increase its value. And also we have its lifecycle method for on init. It will call immediately after the widget is allocated its memory. However, for the onReady, it will call after the widget is rendered on the screen. So if you going to make some API code, and I recommend you put it inside this onInit. If you want to show some dialogue or something after the widget is rendered on the screen, you could put it in this onReady. And we also have this onClose method, which will call just before the controller is deleted from the memory. So you could do some cleaning stuff inside this onClose. And for the binding class, we will talk this later when we actually get into this topic. And also for the view, we have this dependence example class, which is stateless the widget. And also we have put our controller, and it's basically just wrap with getMaterial app, and you will return a scaffold, and we have our app bar, and as you see here, have this title GetX Dependency Management. After that, we have this center widget. Also inside we have this column widget. Make this counter in the center of our screen. So we're using this controller.count.value to access the variable inside this controller, as you see here. And also we have this floating action button. When I click this button, the value will increase, as you see here. So that's just our very basic project setup, and we're going to talk about those instantiating method one by one. So for the first instantiation method we're going to talk about is this getPut, which you will use very often in your project. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code and our emulator. As you see in line 13, I create this final variable. I call this get.put, inject our controller into the memory. As you see here, this is the console when I click this restart button. So first, you will initiate this controller, as you see here, and then after that, you will initiate our getMaterial app controller, and you will see we have controller on init and also controller on ready being called. So for this one, this counter variable, we can use this controller.count.value to access this count variable. Because we using this get.put, and we can actually find this controller using this kind of method, get.find, and we specify what controller we're going to find, and we could increment this count variable, as you see. Another approach is we just create using some default approach, as I mentioned here. Okay, for example, we create this controller by ourselves, and we save the code, and we need to restart this application. You see we have our controller, and we trying to find this controller. However, we didn't call this get.put, so this actually won't work. As you see, the get didn't find the controller because we didn't using this dependency injection instantiation method provided by GetX SDK. So if you want the get state management to manage your instance, you must using this get.put, and you inject this class, so it will automatically manage those instances for you. So if you call this get.find, you will return the controller you put into the memory. So I'm going to comment out this one, and we comment out this and save again. We're going to restart our application. By using this approach, we can find our controller and increase this value here, as you see. Okay, this is a first approach. Another thing I want to mention is this get.put only create a singleton like instant. So for example, I have this controller, and I put controller here, and after that I create the second controller. you see we put the same controller, and we're going to save the code. And here I prepare another widget. Okay, I'm going to uncomment it out, so it's the second controller, right? So we're going to restart our application. If I press this button, both of those count variable increase. That means we're using the same controller here, right? As you see from the console, we only instant one controller. So I guess I press this button, both of those numbers will be increased because we share the same controller. As you see, we using this one. So let's try. When I click this number, this button, you see both those numbers increased. That means this get.put will return the singleton instance for us. If you want to make it multiple instance, you can use another attribute inside this get.put. You could actually give it a label. Okay, so it means something like here. You give it a label. And the label have this unique ID, right? So by doing this, we're going to restart our application. When you press this button, only the first number will increase, because for the second one, this controller 2, so this one won't increase because in here you find the controller. So it means you find the first one and it will only increase the first one. So let's try. Right, you see we only increase the first controller because we have multiple instance. However, if you want to increase the second one, and we're going to use the tag we specified before, it should be the unique ID. The unique ID would be the second controller. We have the same tag which is unique ID. So I'm going to restart this application, and you will see from the console, first we have this controller initiate, right, which is line 13. After that, we have this controller with unique ID being initiated. So which means our line 22, we create another instance. So when I press this button, the second one will increase, as you see. Let's try. So we increase the second counter because we're using the unique ID as the tag to increase that controller. Just keep in mind, if you're using this get.put, so every time you're using get.find, it will return the same instance unless you give a unique tag for this controller. Okay, that's for our get.put. Another thing is this terminal attribute. So for example, we have this attribute inside this get.put. That means you want to keep this controller instance throughout the entire app. And as we all know, if you destroy this view, the controller will remove from the memory as well. So if you want to keep it alive throughout the entire application, you could manually set these terminal to true. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the lazy put. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code, and we're going to comment out our first controller and also the second one. Okay, I'm going to comment out. In here, we're going to uncomment stop here. Don't worry, I'm going to talk these in later for this binding builder. So first we're going to talk this get.lazyPut. So in order using this get.lazyPut, you must put this inside your binding class. So for example, you have your own binding class which implements the binding, right? So you can using the lazyPut here. Another way is for the shortcut, you can using this binding builder, which also implement this binding class. So you could put inside this binding builder. you can put your binding logic here. But for now, we're going to talk about the get.lazyPut, and we will talk about the binding later. So for the get.lazyPut, it means you're going to load your instance when you need it, right? So you don't need to load it when we restart this application. As you see, this controller we're using get.put will load into memory as soon as I press this restart button, right? So if we're using this get.lazyPut, you won't see these in our console. Okay, so let's comment out this part, also this part, and here I'll create a button. Okay, I need to comment out this one as well. When I click this detail button, I will navigate to the detail page. As you see here, I'm using this net route. As you see here, I put these inside the get page. We're mapping this detail route to our detail page. So let's check about the detail page. So inside the detail page, we're using this controller. We're using this get.find. So as you see, we didn't use get.put here because we lazy put the controller in our view. As you see here, we're using this lazy put. We put this controller. So as long as we need this controller, you will load into the memory. And we can find the controller using this get.find. And we have this count of variable, right? You see here inside this objects. And also we have this floating action button. When I press the button, the counter will be increased. So let's clear our console and we're going to restart our application. So as you see, for this dependence example, we only have the get material app. We don't put any controller in this page. So you will see on the console we only have this get material app controller has been created and also initialized because we're using this lazy put. So you'll only load it when we need it. For example, I click this button. So in our detail page, we're going to need this count variable. During that time, this controller will load into the memory. So let's check it out. When I click this button, you'll see first we go to the route detail, which you see is this detail page, and then you will see we have this controller has been created and also has been initialized. So that means we need this controller in our second page. Then you will load into the memory. As you see here, this one lazy load will create the instance we need it. And we also have some attribute associated, which is a dependence, means which class. It could be any class. And also we have this tag as the same as this get.put, and we can create the unique instance. So by default, it also create a singleton. So you will get the same controller every time. So what's more, we have this Phoenix, which means you will create from the same location if you set to true. So let's back to Visual Studio Code, and you see this console. When I click this go back button, the controller actually will remove from the memory. So let's see, when I click the go back button, you will see we close this route, and also the controller on delete being called, and also controller delete from the memory. If I set this Phoenix to true, we will keep our controller in the memory. So let's try it. We go to our view.dar, and in here we have this lazy put, and we can set this Phoenix to true, right? I'm going to save it. Okay, and we're going to restart our application. So keep in mind, if we didn't set this Phoenix, our controller will delete from memory. So let's try it, and we start this application. Okay, now the get material controller has been created and also initialized. So let's click this detail page button. So as you see, we need this counter, so the controller being created and also initialized. And I click this go back button. Our route closed, and also the controller on delete code. But this time we didn't see this controller being deleted from the memory because we're using this Phoenix, right? We set to true. So next time we go to this detail page, you'll create very fast from the same location because we save it in the memory. We didn't delete it from the memory, so it's very fast. We can create it again, and actually it works, right? See? So that's the get.lazyPut. And next we're going to talk about this get.put asynchronized. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code, and let's comment out this get.lazyPut, and we have this get.put asynchronized. So for here, we're going to create another class. As you see, we have some asynchronous task processing in the background. So in the front, we're going to await these 3 seconds. So I'm going to save this one. And let's see. So let's restart our application. And you will see when I click this detail page. Oh, sorry, I forget this controller. So we need to put this controller. So let's save again and restart our application. So as you see, we have this material controller, and watch this console carefully. So first, when I click this button, you will see this controller being created and initialized as soon as I click this button. And after 3 seconds, then you will see this asynchronous task class being initiated and created. So let's see. When I press this button, the controller roll into the memory, right? And you see after 3 seconds, you'll see the instance of this asynchronous task has been created because it's a normal class, you see. So we don't have this on initialized method or on ready method being called. It's just a normal class. So you could put your fetching API here in this put asynchronized method. So the difference is it received the builder. So the builder is you can use a synchronized function. You can do some API call in here. Also, you have this tag, which is the same as those get.put and lazyPut. And also, we have this permanent. By default, it's set to false. If you want this instance alive during this entire application, you can manually set this permanent to true. Okay, so that's basically for those most common used 3 instantiation method in GetX. So there are other 2 instantiation method. For example, this get.create and get.delete. So what's the differences between this get.create and this get.put? So as I mentioned, the get.put will create only one instance among the entire application if you didn't specify this tag. However, if you're using this get.create, it will create no shared instance, which means every time you call this method, it will create a new instance for you, and also the permanent by default will set to true. So for example, so let's back to our Visual Studio Code, and we're going to comment out this one. Comment out this one, and comment out this get.create. So we're going to comment out this lazyPut because we already create this controller by using get.create, right? So, and if you move your mouse, you see the default, the permanent will set to true. So let's save and restart our application. And you will see when I click this detail page and the controller load into memory, and we see this counter here. So we're going to create another one. And by do this, you will see we have instant controller loading to the memory being created and initialized twice. Also, I'm going to do some change on this detail page. So first I create another controller. As you see, I'm using this get.find. If we using get.put and then we're using this get.find, you will find the same controller, right? So for example here, and we have those two objects working on different count variable, right? One is from controller and another is from controller 2. Okay, so and let's back to this view.dar. Watch this console very carefully and you will see the controller being created twice. So let's click this button. You will see we have a controller, right? Controller on init being called and also controller on init being called, and we have a controller already being called twice. You see here, and this instance of controller being initialized twice. So it means this get.create actually create two separate controller for this page, right? So when I press this button, I think only the first number will increase, as I see. And that's these differences between the get.create and get.put. So don't worry, I will talk this get.create when we talk about the GetWidget. So it's better to use together with GetWidget with this get.create. So the get.delete means you can manually delete the instance by using this get.delete. And however, most of the time you don't need this because by default the GetX have this smart management and you will automatically delete those unused controller for you. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how you can find the controller. So back to this Visual Studio Code, and you see in our detail page we have this first approach. We could use this get.find and we put what type of the controller we're going to find. So this is the first approach, and the second approach is I'm going to comment out this. So the second approach is you declare it is a type, which is the controller type, and using the get.find. So they are basically the same stuff. So it depends on you prefer. So those two actually do the same thing. This is how you can find the controller. So you could using this get.find.controller in here, right? You increment this count variable, and also you can use just this controller because you already find it and you have this type, so you can access to this controller, right? And you put in here. Another way is something like get.find, right? You specify the controller. So it basically means the same thing. Okay. So after that, we're going to talk about how you can alternate the controller by using two methods. One is get.replace. So another is this get.lazyReplace. Maybe you hear about the polymorphism in other type of programming language. Basically, it means you can use your child class to substitute your parent class. For example, here. So we have this parent controller. We put this parent, and also we have this child, and we're using this put, right? So we manually put two instance into our dependency management. So I'm going to find in our detail page, right? So in here, I'm going to comment it out. So we have this child, right? As you see, we put both parents and child into the memory. So in here, we're going to find this child, and also I'm going to print if this child is an instance of the child. So we're going to save it and clear the console, and we're going to restart this application. As you see, we have this line of statement, so we only create this parent instance. This one actually didn't call because we have this parent. So when I click this button, we navigate to the second page, and you will see this one actually is a false. We actually find a parent. So let's change the position of this. So we're going to save again. So this time it will be true because we only load this child into the memory, and you will see this child is true, right? We have this child instant, so it will be true. But in the reality, you don't want to remember the sequences, right? Which line of code you write first and later. So here comes the second approach. GetX Pro I asks this replaced, right? And we can replace this instance with this one. So that's it, and we can restart our application. And you will see first we have this parent, right? Allowing a create, and we call this replace. So you will delete this one and put this again, right? So this time, and when I navigate to our second page, you will see it should be a child instead of a child. So let's see. You'll see this is child turn to true. So replace means you will remove this from a memory, this instance of parent from a memory, and inject this child into the memory. And get a lazy replace means the same thing, but you just lazy create the instance when you need it. So next we're going to talk about the binding. So for the binding, you can have two approach to bind your controller with your view. So the first approach is you create your own class. For example, for our detail page, we have this detail binding, which implements this binding class, right? And then we're going to override this method, which is the dependence method. So in here, we lazy put our controller, okay, and back to our view page. So I'm going to comment out this one and this one as well. And here we have this get material app. We have this get page, and we could using this way, and we binding our detail binding with our page. So I'm going to comment out this. Okay, we bind our dependence with our view, right? And also I'm going to using this one, right? Okay, and we're going to save it. So for our detail page, I'm going to comment this and comment this, okay, and comment out this, also comment out this, okay, save. And we have this route table, and we map this detail to this detail page, and in detail page we have this details binding. So in detail binding, we bind our controller, and we're using this lazy put. So you will only allow this controller into a memory when we actually in the detail page. So let's restart our application and watch the console very careful. And as you see, our Get Material controller has been created and initialized. And when I click this detail page, and you'll see our controller actually create and initialize, which means it load into the memory, and we could click this button and the count increase. So we could using this binding, which you need to override this method. This is our first approach. We create this class and implement the bindings. So let's check. This is our first approach, right? We're using this binding class and with this name raw. So another one is we can be using this binding class with a normal raw. So let's comment out this one. Get page. So we're going to comment out this entire get page attribute. So in here, by this on press, we're going to use the normal raw. We're going to use get.to. So in the name raw, we're using get.toName, and we to the detail raw. In here, we only are using the get.to, and we go to the detail page, and we have this binding attribute. So we bind our detail bindings. So let's save, and we're going to restart our application. Yeah, it's probably the same thing. So when I click this detail page and we initialize our controller, right? So we click it, yeah, it works. So there are two approaches. So you create this binding class and you can use it with name raw and also the normal raw. Okay. And I'm going to comment out this one and open our first approach. So I need to uncomment this. GetX also provide this shortcut for us. So if you don't want to write this binding class, you think it's too much work, you can just using these binding builders. The binding builder actually implement this binding as well. So you could using this one, and you actually receive the builder. So here you could do the same stuff. You lazy put your controller. We're going to save our code and restart our application, and you'll see we have a good material controller create and initialize. When I click this button, our controller will be created and initialized because we're using this lazy put, right? And this is a shortcut, and you can also use it in your normal route, right? You just place in binding attribute. So let's two approach to using the binding. So first one, you can create a class, and another one is you using this bindings builder. And the last thing I want to mention is the GetX have these smart management attribute inside the Get Material app. So you see, I scroll up to this material app, and we have this smart management. Smart management actually have three types. So the first one is for, means it will dispose classes they are not being used and will not set to be permanent. So you will automatically delete those controller which is permanent set to false, and also it will automatically management those for you. Another one is this only builder. For only builder, they don't have permission to dispose the class using get.put or get.put synchronize. So they don't have a permission to delete the dependence using those two methods. So the last one is keep the factory. This one, it means you will save your controller in the factory. Then you will recreate the dependence when you need it again. Something similar with this Phoenix. And that's all for today's lesson. It's quite a lot of stuff, and I highly recommend you go to practice and you can understand it more. And I will upload this Mindmap and the source code in my Patreon. So if you are interested in those, feel free to reach out to my Patreon. I really appreciate for those people who support me. I can't do those videos without your help. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notifications so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thank you guys. I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. So in today's lesson, we're going to learn internationalization in this GetX package. We have learned the raw management, the state management and also the dependency management in this GetX package in our previous lesson. So if you are new here, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial for beginners, and Dart tutorial for beginners. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sign up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. First, I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code in Android emulator. As you can see here, I made this demo app before today's lesson. Don't worry, I will walk through the code line by line and explain to you so you'll know how to make internationalization in this GetX package. So in order to make internationalization in GetX, first you need to create your custom class which extends translation. Let's take a look in this translation folder, and here we have a translation example.dar, which just the entry point for our application, and we wrap it with our material app. And then we have this translation view.dar, which is the basic view for our application. And we have a translation controller for our application, and also this messages class for our application. So first I'm going to talk about this message.dar. As you see, this message is our custom class which extends the translation provided by this Get SDK. As you see, in order to make our application internationalization, we need to first create our custom class that extends the translation class provided by GetX. As you see here, we override the keys method in this translation. And you see this syntax, we have the return type and this special keyword get and our method's name. And in this method, we don't receive any parameter. We only have one return type, which is this map. And you can see here, this get keyword is a special method in the Flutter, which is getter. So the getter is a special class method that's used to retrieve the value of the class field. In here, we're going to retrieve the keys inside our messages class. And let's back to Visual Studio Code. And inside this method, as you see, the return type, we have the map, and inside the map we have the string as a key and another map as its value. So for example, here we define this country code and language code. For the country code and language code, here I find this website, and I will put it in the description below, and you can check the country code and the language code for specific language. So for example, in our Visual Studio Code, the EM means the language code, which is English, and the US would be the country code, and it's United States. Here we have our another map. The hello is a key, and we have value is hello world, and we have a Spanish version. The key is the same, which is this hello, and we have this hola for the value. And basically you need to define these keys inside your custom class that extends this translation, as I mentioned in this Mindmap. Let's back to Visual Studio Code, and we have our view. As you see in the view, we have this message controller. So let's see what's inside this message controller. For the message controller, we extend the GetX controller. That means we're going to let GetX state management to manage our controller. And inside our message controller, we define a method which is called change language, and we receive the language code and the country code. And here we create this locale and we pass our language code and the country code. As you see here, the language code will be our first parameter and the country code will be our second parameter. After that, we're going to use this get.update locale and pass the custom locale and change it, right? So this is basically for this message controller, which changed the locale. Okay, let's close it. Inside our translation view.dar, we're going to create our message controller and inject it into the memory. We're using this get.put, and then that's back to this Mindmap. We're going to use this specific symbol to translate our text. So for example, you just append this tr at the end of your key. Here we have this text widget, as you see here, and we have this hello is defined in our message there, and we have this hello. You will replace the key with the its value based on the locale we choose. For example, if you have English as your system language, you will display the hello world. If you have Spanish as your system language, you will display this hola. And back to our translation view, in order to let Get to automatically replace the text for you, you're going to add this tr after your key. For example, something in here, as you see, we have this hello world, and when I click this button, and you will see the button actually using our message controller, and we change the language. We change to a Spanish version, the new locale, and you will turn to Spanish. So let's see, when I click this button, you will see our text actually change. And you are going to make some config for your GetMaterial app before you can achieve this translation. So back to our translation.example, and we have our GetMaterial app. So inside the GetMaterial app, we have some attribute need to specify. The first one would be the translation. The translation, you're going to pass your custom translation class that extends the translation, and then you're going to put your locale in this locale attribute. And first, the translation will be displayed in this locale, and you also have this fallback locale. That means if the first one have some error, you automatically choose the second one, which is this fallback locale. And you can manually specify the locale you want to use. And also there's another way you can use your system locale. Just means you're going to use this get.device locale. You will automatically retrieve the system locale and put it here. This is the requirement you're going to use the translation in the GetX. So after you finish this step, and we can get to this translation view.dar and put our key here, append this tr inside our text widget, and we have this translation button which can change our language. When I press this English, this entire text will change back to English again. So you see, we can change different language as long as you define the enough key in our message.dar. Another thing I want to mention is actually you can use translation with some parameters. As you see in this application, you see my name and my email will be the same no matter I change the locale to Spanish. When I click this Spanish button, I change my locale to Spanish, but my name and my email will be the same. So that means we're using the parameter in this translation. So let's back to Visual Studio Code. How I achieve these, and I put this login as a key, and we have English version as well as the Spanish version. But the differences is I have this name with this @ symbol, and this will be something I'm going to replace in my text widget with this tr parameters method. As you see here, this name and email just a placeholder. You're using this @ symbol. And back to our translation view.r. Here we have this text widget, and inside we're using this login as a key, and we're using this tr parameters method. And you'll see we change this name to my name and email to my email, so we could achieve this translation with parameter. Yeah, it's pretty simple and easy, right? Thanks to GetX, it makes internationalization very easy and simple in our app development. And I think that's all for today's video, and I will post the code and the mind map to my Patreon. I encourage you guys to practice this along with the video so you can get more understanding of how you can fully use this internationalization in GetX. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to change light theme to dark theme using GetX package. And this is my sixth video talking about GetX package. If you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page, and you will find a completely Flutter GetX tutorial for beginners, and Flutter tutorial, or Dart programming language tutorial, and also Flutter UI from the scratch tutorial. After we finish this GetX tutorial, we're going to build the application using the GetX package. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So first, let's open the Visual Studio Code in Android emulator. As you see here, I wrote the code for today's lesson, and I will walk through those examples line by line and give you an explanation. As you see, this is a demo for the dynamic changing the theme using GetX package, changing light mode to dark mode. When I press this button, the light theme will change to a dark theme, as you see here, and also the text will change from black to white, depends on the current theme. That's back to the mind map. As you see, if you want to dynamically changing your theme, so first you're going to create a theme file inside your Flutter app. As you see here, I create a theme folder, and here I create a themes.dart, themes view, and themes controller. So let's look into this themes.dart. For the themes.dart, I create the custom theme, and one is light theme, another is dark theme. As you see, I'm using the default light theme from this color schema. Here are some predefined color for light theme, and here is some predefined color for the dark theme. And as you see here, this purple from the dark theme is this primary color, and we can change back to the light theme, and this dark purple color is came from this primary color. And this is our first step to define this custom themes color. And you can define your text theme, button theme inside the theme data. And as you see here, there are lots of attributes, you can pass your text theme through this constructor. Okay, and back to the mind map. After we finish the first step, the second step is to configure our theme in this GetMaterial app. Let's open our theme example. As you see, we wrap our example by this GetMaterial app. Inside this GetMaterial app, we're going to configure some attribute. So first is the theme, which is the light theme. We're going to import our custom theme, and as you see here, we make these field static, so you can access to this attribute using this class name dot light theme, right? As you see here, we can using the class name dot light theme for our light theme, and class name dot dark theme for our dark theme. And then we're going to configure our theme mode. As you see, we will get from our theme controller. And let's look into our theme controller. Here we have this getter method for our theme. First, we're going to check the theme mode in our local storage. And if we start mode, we're going to return theme mode.dar. Otherwise, we're going to return theme mode.lie. So don't worry if you didn't know this get storage. We're going to talk it later. So as you see here, we're passing this theme controller.theme, which is the getter method return this theme data, and we're using this get.put. Put our theme controller into the memory so it can access to our theme. Back to the Mindmap. After we configure the theme and dark theme in GetMaterial app, so the next step is create our theme controller and define those changing theme method. So let's back to Visual Studio Code. In this theme controller, we extend the GetX controller, and here we have some method to changing the theme. So the first one is changing theme, and we receive the theme data. This is the first one, and we're going to call this get.change theme from GetX SDK. After that, we have this change theme mode, and we will receive the theme mode, and also we will use the GetX SDK, which is this change theme mode provided by the GetX. We can change the theme mode. Okay, there's two methods we have in our controller. So let's back to this theme view. So in a theme view, we're going to find our theme controller. So as you see, when I start our application, first the theme controller will load into the memory. So in our example, which is the themes view.dar, we can find our theme controller, and we can access to its attribute or method inside this theme controller. And we scroll down, we have this GetX theme, which is a black text here, and also we have a button. And let's look into this on press. When I press this button, first we're going to check if our app is under the dark mode, and we can using this getUtil method, which to return the boolean value if it's a dark mode. If it's a dark mode, we're going to change our theme mode to light theme. So for this else statement, we're going to change the theme mode back to the dark theme. So as you see here, when I click this button, the theme mode will change to dark theme, because this one is returned false, so it will execute this statement. Okay, so let's check, and we can change the theme to a dark theme, and when I click again, it will change to light theme again. And another approach is we can change the theme instead of the theme mode. So let's comment this out. Okay, uncomment this one. Also, we're going to comment this out. Uncomment this. Okay, and we save again. We're going to restart our application. Okay, you see we finished the initialize for our theme controller. So basically it will be the same as we change the theme mode. Here I'm going to click the button and our theme will change to dark theme, and when I click this button again, you will back to the light theme. That's how you can dynamic changing your app theme in this GetX package. So back to the Mindmap, and we can use the third-party library to save the user preferences for its theme. For example, if you user change the light theme to dark theme, so the next time when you restart your application, you will read the user's preference and display the dark theme in your application. So how can we achieve this? And here I'm going to introduce another package which is called GetStorage, and we're going to store users preference in local storage, and next time we can read this information and display the correct theme. So back to our Visual Studio Code. In order to save users preference, we're going to using this GetStorage package. So first we're going to install this package by placing this GetStorage in our pubs.bc YAML file, as you see here in line 37. After you finish here, you're going to install the dependency and then place this one, the package, on the top of your controller file, as you see here. And then we have this instance of our storage, and we define a key is dark mode, right? And then we're going to load our theme. So first we're going to rate our is dark mode. By default we'll give it false. So for example, so the first time we don't have this key in our local storage, so it will return the false. And when user changing the theme, as you see, we have this save theme method, and we're going to write this key with this boolean value which passed by the user. As you see here, after we changing the light theme, and we're going to save the theme. As you see, its dark mode will be false, and we pass to this controller, and we're going to save to our local storage. Right, so next time when you open the application, first you will load our theme and read this is dark mode key. After you have those two methods, load theme and save theme, you're going to use this GetStorage. So init method in your main.dark. As you see from this readme file, first you're going to initialize your storage driver with this await keyword, and we turn this main method to asynchronous. So first we're going to initialize our GetStorage, and as you see here in our theme controller, we can create our instance after GetStorage finish is initialized, and we can get our start mode this key, and we can read the key and write the data to the key, and it will store in our local storage. So next time when you open your application, by default you will load the user's preference. So for example here, and I change the theme to dark theme, right? And I'm going to restart our application. As you see, our application finished a restart, and it displays the dark mode, right? Okay, I'm going to comment out these local storage method, and you will see the differences between using a storage or no using a storage. So let's comment out the save theme. method in our theme.view. Okay, so we're going to save it. Also in this main.dar, we're going to comment out our GetX storage for our theme controller, and we're going to comment out this save theme. Okay, and no theme. So for this getter method, we're going to change to using get start mode. Okay, so let's save. I'm going to restart our application. So this time we are now save the user preference in the local storage. As you see, I changed this theme to a dark mode, right? And I restart this application. The application will back to the light theme. You see? So after it finish initialized, the theme will back to the light theme. So that's why I'm going to use this get storage to store the user's preferences. So next time when I restart our application, you will keep the user's preferences for the last time. Okay, here I'm going to change it back to using the data from local storage. So first, I'm going to uncomment those out, and same for load theme and read theme. I'm going to replace it here, and we're going to save it for our main.dar and uncomment this out. Okay, and for our theme view.dar and uncomment those two. And here we're going to comment out this change theme. We're going to use this change theme mode, right? Okay, uncomment this out. So comment this one and open this one and save. So we're going to change it to the dark theme, and we're going to restart our application. As you see, we finished the initialize of our theme controller, and it keeps the dark theme because we save this theme mode to local storage, and it will read the data from the local storage, which is the dark mode is set to the true, right? So it will keep the dark theme. And when I change back to the light theme and I restart the application, this app will keep the light theme because it reads the data from the local storage, and it indicates its dark mode false. So you're going to display the light theme. Okay, so that's all for today's lesson. We learned how to dynamically changing the light theme to dark theme using GetX package. I will upload this Mindmap along with my source code to my Patreon. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, thumb up my content, and open a notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to learn GetX services and GetView in GetX package. And this is our 7th video talking about the GetX package. So if you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, Flutter GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial, and Dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, thumb up my content, and open a notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Let's open our Visual Studio Code and Android emulator. As you see, here I have wrote the code before today's lesson. which is under this GetX service. And here we have a service example.dar, service view.dar, and setting service.dar. So let's look into this service example. So the service example just a normal class that extends the select widget. Inside it is build method. It returns the example which wrapped by this getMaterial app. Let's look into the servers view.dar. So in the servers view.dar, we have this scaffold widget, and we have our app bar, have this GetService as it is title shown on the top of our screen, and then we have the text widget in the center of the screen, indicate how many times we press this button, and we have this increased button which can increase our counter. The last one will be the setting servers.dar, and this will be the most important one we're going to talk in today's lesson, which extends the GetX service. So as I mentioned before, the GetX service will be a class that will exist the entire application lifecycle. So as long as you initialize this setting service, and you are not going to remove from your memory. Let's look into the Mindmap. So the GetX service, like the normal class, have the lifecycle on init, on ready, and on close. Or you just create your custom class that extends the GetX service. So for example, you have your API service, which want to lie throughout the entire application, and also you have the storage service, the cache service, and you don't want to delete those services until you close your application. Since the GetX state management won't be able to remove the GetX service, however, we could manually remove this service by call this get.reset method. So let's look into the code example. So back to the Visual Studio Code. As you see, we have our setting service, right? And we have this initial method going to read the data from our local storage. So in today's example, I'm going to use another package, which is a shared preference. It's an alternative for the get storage we use in our last video. And as you see, this is a shared preference package which have 4,300 likes on PubDev. So back to today's code, and you see I using this late keyword, and I'm going to initialize this instance of our shared preferences in this init method, right? And I'm going to use this await keyword to wait the instance. Then I'm going to make this init method asynchronized. You will return the future of our current instance, which is this setting service. So we're going to call this method before I run our application. So let's back to the main.dart file, as you see. And before I run my application, first I'm going to call this method, which is service init service, right? And it's a synchronized method. So I return this future void, and I'm going to await for initialize our service. So inside this initial service method, we going to print out starting service, and also service started before and end of initialize our setting server. As you see, I'm using this put synchronized method to synchronize put our service into the memory. As you see here, I call the setting service init method, which would be this method, and we're going to initialize our shared preferences, and we can get the value from our local storage, and we set to the count variable, as you see here. it will show how many times I have pressed for this button. So back to main.dar. After we finish getting this data and we run this application. What's more, another important thing I want to mention is in line 16, you're going to make sure your widget Flutter binding initialized before you custom inject your dependence into this Flutter app. So we need to call this line of code before you initialize your setting service or any kind of service, right? Let's restart our application, and you're going to look at this console very careful. As you see, I have a restart my application. So first I'm going to see this starting service, right? And we are now run this application. So first we're going to run this line 17, and we see this starting service here. And then we're going to call this setting service.init, and which is this method. And we have this line of debug print on our console. So the setting service initialized the share preferences, and also share preferences is ready. That means we have already initialized our share preferences, so our counter will have this 9, right, show on the screen. Okay, so and then you will set the service started, which is line 26. Okay, so basically you can put any servers, right? For example, you can like have your get storage and your Hive, your share preference, any kind of a synchronized function. So here I'm going to increase our counter. For example, I increase to 12. So I price 3 times, and I'm going to restart our application. So you're going to see, and you will show I have 12 times, right? After we finish those initialized dependence. Okay, you see it doesn't change. So maybe I need to stop this application and I run again. So you can see it clearly. So when I open my application again, it will still show the number 12. Okay, so let's see. So we have this initial value would be a 0, but we're going to load it from our share preferences. So you're going to see it's 12 and it's not 0. So for the first time. Okay, you see. Okay, that's basically how you can use this GetService in your Flutter app. So let's back to the Mindmap. So the next thing I'm going to talk is this GetView. So GetView, which means it's a stateless widget, have this getter controller for registered controller. So let's back to our Visual Studio Code, and here I'm going to change this service view.dar, because you see before this build method I manually find our controller, this line of code. So suppose you have many Dart file, each one you're going to file controller. Another way is you using this GetView. So for example, you extend the GetView and you specify the controller you're going to use, then you can actually like comment out this line of code. Right? So it basically do the same thing. So we're going to save our application. Okay, clear out the console and going to restart it. It won't broke the application, so basically it just have the getter method to get this controller for you. So you just need to specify what kind of controller you are using. Right, for example, here we're using this setting service, so we could increase this counter. That's all for today's lesson. It will be a short video talking about GetxService and GetView. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we're going to learn GetWidget in this GetX package. So we will base on this shopping cart example combined with the getCreate method, which inside the dependency management of this GetX package, and also I will using the GetWidget for this shopping item. So first I will give you a quick demo for today's lesson. As you see, we have this shopping cart, and I can increase the quantity for each item. And as you see, we have this total quantity, which indicate I have 2 Apple Watch. I can increase my headphone, so the total will be 5. And when I increase these shoes, and total number will also increase. I will using getCreate method and getLazyPut along with GetView and GetWidget in this example. So if you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, Flutter GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial, and Dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, thumb up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Let's open our Visual Studio Code and Android emulator. As you see here, I wrote the code before today's lesson, and I will give you an explanation for the code I wrote. So first, let's look into our project structure. First, I have my card folder. Under card folder, we have card view and card controller. And then I have this item folder, and I have item view, item model, and item controller as well. And you can see in this project folder. So for our main entry, as you see, we return the getMaterial application, and our home will be our card view. The card view will be the page you see on here. So inside the card view, we have a scaffold and we have app bar. Just have our title, my card, shown here. And then we have a column widget. Inside column widget, we're going to list out all the items which you see here, right? And the item will be in this item view. So the item just the layout for each of those shopping items. And the most important part is this initial binding. So as you see, I'm using this binding builder just for easy in this case. If you don't know what is binding builder, you can find my dependency management tutorial for GetX in my GetX tutorial playlist. So the binding inside this binding builder, I just using this LazyPut and inject our card controller. So what is card controller? Let's check the card controller. Inside this card controller, we extend the GetX controller, and we only have this simple variable. As you see, this total quantity, and we have 2 methods. One is to increase our total quantity, another one is decrease our total quantity. So as you see here, I'm using this LazyPut, means this card controller would have a single instance which share among this whole view, this card view, right? So every time I click those increase button for different items, a total quantity will be increased since it share among this entire card view. So another one is this item controller, As you see, here I using this get.create method, means I will create this item controller every time I using this get.find method. So let's look into the code for this item controller. So for the item controller, we also have this quantity variable that you see, and in here, and we have increase method which increase the quantity for each item, and so we have this reset method, because when I decrease the quantity for each item, it can be minus. So I will check if it smaller than 0, I will reset to 0 for each item's quantity. Back to this GetX widget.dart, and we're using different approach to inject our dependence. So for this lazy put for the card controller, so let's look into this card view. As you see, this card view, I'm going to extend the GetView, because this card controller will share the same instance, right? So I'm using this GetView, and by default GetView will return the getter method for this card controller. So I can just using the controller in our GetView. So I'm going to search the, as you see, we have this controller which provided by this GetView, and we could access to the variable here, and also we could increase it or decrease it. That's for our card view. And back to this item view. So in the item view, and here I'm using the GetWidget. So that means every time you will find the same instance for our item controller, because we are using the getCreate. You will create different instance when we're using get.find, right? So here we also have this controller variable. Here we're using controller decrease the item, and we have another one is increase. So this controller is provided by this GetWidget. We're going to find the same instance. So let's look at this debug console. As you see, when I start our application, first we have our material controller load into memory. Then we have this card controller. As you see, we only have one card controller. And then we have this item controller. It will print out 4 times, right? Because we have 4 items. And each time I using the controller.increase, you will get the same instance for us, because we're using this GetWidget. In this item view, we're using shopping cart controller, and we find this cart controller by using this get.find. So you will guarantee we'll find this cart controller for us, because we're using this lazy put, and you will create a singleton instance for us. So that's for our item view. And as you see, for this increase method, I will first increase the count variable in this controller, which is item controller. Then I will also increase this quantity in this shopping cart controller as well. So you see, when I increase this t-shirt quantity, the total quantity will increase as well. And for our decrease method, so first I will decrease the quantity for that item I click. As you see, I decrease the quantity for this Apple Watch, and then I will check if the quantity is smaller than 0. If it's smaller than 0, I will reset the quantity to 0. Otherwise, I will decrease this total quantity. As you see, our total quantity decreased to 8. And then I click those decrease button twice. You see, it never ends to minus quantity, because we have this conditional statement to check if the quantity is smaller than 0. So that is our item view for this shopping cart. And let's look into our item model. So the item model just very simple class that do the object mapping for our shopping cart, and we define this image URL, the title, size, and price. And we have this static method which generate a list of items for us to use in our shopping cart. So that's basically the whole example for our shopping cart. Okay, I think that's all for today's lesson for this shopping cart example combined with GetWidget and GetCreate. And I will post the code example along with this Mindmap to my Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. And we will build the complete application using this GetX package after we finish this entire GetX series. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we're going to learn GetConnect inside the GetX package. And this is the demo we're going to build using the GetConnect to send the HTTP request following a Restful API standard. And I will walk through the example and give you an explanation how to use it. Although we were using the DO package in our real development, but since GetX provides this feature that you make a RESTful API communication, so I will just briefly talk about this. And if you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, Flutter GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial, and dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, let's open our Visual Studio Code and Engine Emulator. As you see, here I wrote the code before today's lesson, and I will guide you through with these examples and give you an explanation. So first, let's look into the user example.dart. This will be our main chain point for this application. As you see in this build method, I only set up its home attribute, which will return our user view. And another one is I initiate its binding, and I pass the user binding for this user view. And let's look into this user binding. So in the user binding, I first initialize the user provider using this get.lazyPut, and then I lazy initialize the user controller by passing this user provider. As you see, I'm using this get.find, and you will find my user provider. So let's back to this Mindmap, and the user provider in this example, you will provide the RESTful API communication to your backend. So back to the Visual Studio Code, and let's look into the user provider. So in the user provider, I extend the GetConnect, which is today's topic, and I can do some custom configuration inside the user provider. As you see, we have this onInit method, which would run when we initiate our user provider, and we can configure its basic URL or a default decoder, and sometimes you can also set up its request modifier or response modifier. So let's back to Visual Studio Code, and then we have this get a list of user method, which will call this get request for our API/user, and it will concat this URL with our base URL. So you will see a list of user after we call this getUser method, and that's for our user provider. So let's look into our user controller. So in the user controller, we extend the GetX controller. Also, we using this state maxim, and I will talk about this state maxim later. So first, we have this user provider attribute, and we pass from its constructor. And in this user controller init method, we're using this fetched all user, right? So we will call this fetched all user, and inside this fetched all user, we're using a user provider get users, right? You will get the response of a list of users, and we're using this then method, and we can retrieve the data from our result, and we will send it back to our front end. The reason I use this changed method because I use the state maxim, so it will pass the data to this changed method, and it will show on our screen if we have the data. Otherwise, it will show the error, and this will combine with this user view, and we have a controller.obx, and we can access the state, and we can render the user information on the screen. So initially, you will show the circular progress indicator. So when I restart our application, so first you will see a circular indicator, which means we are fetching the data from our backend. And you see after a few seconds, the list of user information listed out on our screen means we successful get the user data back in this way. So we will get the user data back, and we set this data to our changed method, and indicate we have a new state, right? So we can get the state in here. So this one would be our new state, which is a list of user model, right? And we can show a list of users on our screen. Okay, so let's basically for this user view. Okay, I know it's hard to understand for the first time, but don't worry, I will talk about this again. So back to the user controller. So first, you need to understand this change method is associated with this state maxim. And when I specify the type for this state maxim, which is a list of user model, that means the first parameter we have in this change method, we have the same type as we specify at our state maxim, and then this data will be passed back to our user view when we're using this controller.obx, right? So I'm going to rename this state to the data, so it will be better for you to understand. So we will get the data back in this our controller.obs. So we will have the data which is passing from here. All right. So initially is to fetching the data. So you will show this circular progress indicator. Unless we have data back, we'll render a list of view contains a list of user profile, as you see here, right? So for example, I'm going to change the URL in our base URL. So I change to something no exist, right? So I save. I'm going to restart our application, and in this time you will see this error message, because first you will show the circular progress indicator, and then you will show this error. As you see, the error is the string is not the subtype of int or index, because we sending the wrong base URL. So you will see this type of error. So you will not call this one. You will not trigger this one. This one will only trigger when you successful get the data back. So I'm going to change the user provider, and we change to correct URL, and we save again, and we restart our application. So you will see these trigger this the builder will trigger because we have a data back, right? And we can pass it to this user profile and show a list of user here. And I hope for now you have a better understanding for this GetConnect. That means you can send in your request to your backend following the Restful API standard, which is the get, post, put, and delete. But in reality, we were using the third-party library called Deal, and I will talk that in the future video. So I think that's all for today's lesson, and I will upload all the source code and Mindmap to my Patreon, so you could find the resources there. Okay, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, download my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to learn GetX best practice and the command line interface, which is GetX CLI. If you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find Flutter UI from scratch tutorial, Flutter GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial, and Dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, download my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about the MVC design pattern. The M stands for model, B stands for the view, and C stands for the controller. As you see from this diagram, the user action sent to the controller, and the controller will send a request to the module, and module will get the data and respond back to the controller, and controller notify the view to update the UI. In this pattern, the module handles data logic and interacts with the database. The controller handles request flow by the user, and the view handles data presentation, and it will dynamically render the page. From this diagram, we saw the view never talk to the module, and module never talk to view. They will communicate through the controller, so we can write our business logic inside the controller. And we will follow this design pattern to structure our project using the GetX. So I will talk about the GetX pattern in this project. Here is the example project that follow the GetX pattern. And first, you see we have the main.dart and the app folder. The app folder is where all the applications directory will be contained. So inside this app folder, we have a data folder. The data folder will be representable for containing everything related to our data. And we have enums folder contain a list of custom defined enum class, and we have our service folder which contain the service that will extend the GetX service. As we mentioned in our previous lesson, we can use GetX service for our authentication or local storage. Then we will have a providers folder contains our data provider, which can be API or local database or Firebase for this example. Then we will have our models folder, which contain our custom classes. Usually we'll use this for the object relation mapping for our database table. After that, we will have our modules folder. So the modules folder consists of a list of pages. For example, we have a home page and detail page. So we have a separate folder for each page. And for each page, and we have our view, view controller, binding, and repository. So if we have some widget which only used by the home page, so we will create this widgets folder under our home module. And then we will have our widgets folder under the application folder. So this widget is for the global, so that will common use by different pages. And then we will have this routes folder, contains different routes and pages. The routes.dart will contain a list of constant string for the route, and the pages will for mapping that route with our page. And then we will have our code folder. So inside this code, we will have our values folder, themes folder, and utils folder. For the value, we will have string.dart contains a list of strings, and colors.dart, and also we can create our language folder under this values folder, and we have a different language. For example, we have English.dart and Chinese.dart. Inside our themes folder, we can have text theme.dart, button theme.dart. And inside this utils folder, we can have our keys.dart and helpers.dart. So don't worry, we'll have a real project based on this GetX pattern. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Okay, we finished the walkthrough for the GetX pattern. So next we will talk about the Get command line interface that will implement this GetX pattern. You can find the official Get CLI package on pub.dev. It's called Get CLI, and I will walk through of those commands. Okay, let's back to the Mindmap. So first, we need to install our Get CLI package. You can run this Flutter pub global active Get CLI command to install the Get CLI. However, when you successful install, you cannot using the get command because you need to configure your system path. For the Mac OS, you need to decide which shell you are using. If you running Z shell, you can follow the same step I did in this Mindmap. So first you open your ZRC file, and then you export your system path. So for example, we will show here. So first I need to open my ZRC file, and you will see I place the part inside this file, which is this line. So just copy this one and paste in here, and you hit command save and you close it, and then you need to reopen this terminal, or you can use this source command to reload the terminal. Right? So that is for the Mac OS. If you run the Windows, I will put the link in the description how you can set up your path for the Windows. Okay, next I will show you how to use Get command line interface to create our GetX project. So first let's open our terminal, and we will go to our projects folder, and in our project folder we're going to use get command to create our project name. I'm going to call it GetX pattern example. So by hit the enter, it will show you which project you're going to create. You could either choose Flutter project or GetService. So here I'm going to create the Flutter project. So the company name, let's call it comp.all-star school. Okay, and we choose Swift and we choose Kotlin, and we want non-safety, and we're going to use the linter, which is star recommended, and then it's creating our project for us. So we just need to wait a few minutes, and this one is the most important part. You need to choose the GetX pattern. So in the case I choose the number 1 and I hit enter, and we will need to override our application. So we're going to override the default Flutter project and just wait a few seconds, we indicate we successfully create our GetX pattern example. So we're going to use our VS Code to open our project. So we're going to navigate to the projects folder, and it's called GetX pattern example. So we're going to open it. So here you see we have our library folder, and it will basically the same as we mentioned in this best practice. We have this app folder, and we have a data folder, and we have a module folder contains home folder. Home folder we have a home binding, home controller, and home view, and we have these routers folder and contain this router string. Right, we have a home route, and we have a home page for the route mapping. So basically, it's a very simple project, and we can follow the same structure to make it scale and maintainable. So back to this command line interface, we're going to try some different command in this case. So first command we're going to try is create another page. So for example, inside this we have our home page, right? And we're going to create another detail page. So you could either use a terminal, or you can use the terminal integrate inside this Visual Studio Code. So for simple, I just use this one, and I'm going to GetX pattern example, and now we're using get create. I think it's called get create page, right? I get create page and detail page. So by hit enter, you will see we have another folder create for us, which contains binding, controller, and the view, right? And the most important part is when you create this detail folder, you automatically do the mapping for you. So you will create detail route, right, and your map for the project. So you will do it automatically for you. So it's very convenient for this case. And you can also create your view, separate view, and your controller by yourself. So by default, if you run this get create page with your folder's name, you will create the binding for you, the controller for you, and the view for you. So if you want to create another controller, you can run this get create controller command followed by your controller name and this on keyword to indicate which folder. So for example, if we want to create a login controller on our home folder, so we could run the command like get create, and we will have our controller. We're going to call login controller, and it's on our home folder. So we hit enter, and back to our Visual Studio Code, and you will see under our home folder, the controller will have a login controller. We could also use the command I'm showing here to create a separate view. So for example, and I'm going to create a login view. So we will using get create view login on home folder. So let's hit enter, and let's back to Visual Studio Code, and you will see we have a login view under the same view folder on our home folder, right? But the difference is when I'm using this separate command to create a separate view, it didn't indicate which controller we are using, right? So if you create a view using this page command, you will indicate you are going to use the home controller by default. So if you're using this view command to create a separate view, it didn't indicate which controller you are going to use. And also, I think I make a mistake in this case, so we could remove the view and controller. So it will automatically append the view for you. Same for the controller. So next we're going to show you how you can create this provider. So basically I just follow the same command. So for example, I'm going to create a user provider under our home folder. So I'm going to paste on our terminal and I hit enter. Back to our Visual Studio Code, and you will see we will have this providers folder automatically create for us, and we can take a look for this user provider. It basically just extend the GetConnect. So if you don't know GetConnect, feel free to reach out to my channel page. I actually create this GetConnect tutorial, how you can use the GetConnect to fetch the Restful API for your backend. And we also can use the command line interface to generate a localization file for us. So we need to do is we need to create the translation file in JSON format under this SS locales folder, right? So here I'm going to create our SS folder. Okay, we have locale, so we're going to create the English version JSON. So first for English version, we're going to have our key hello, right, which is hello, and for the we have hello, and we have hola. So you can save. I'm going to run this command to generate the localization. And back to Visual Studio Code, and you will see we have this generated folder for us. We will have our app translation, we have our local key. We can use this locale in our application. And next we're going to create the model using the get command. So there are two options. We can create a model with provider and a model without provider. If you're using the first option, you will create the module and the provider as well. So we will try the first one. And first thing we need to is to define this user JSON. So back to Visual Studio Code, under our access folder, we're going to create our models folder, and we will have our user JSON.dar contains the name, which is my name, and the age, right? So we're going to save this user JSON because we want using this first command, it will create the provider for us. So I'm going to delete this user provider, and we're going to run this command. So I just copy this one and paste on my terminal, and I hit enter. Okay, it says the user module.dar create successful, and the user provider also create successful. So going back to our Visual Studio Code, and first we're going to look at this user class, right? You see we have our name and age, we have this from JSON and to JSON, and we also have this user provider which extends the GetConnect, and you will see we have this getUser, this method we can use to retrieve the single user, and we can also post the user using this post method, and can also delete the user. So you will automatically implement this user provider. So if we using the second option, skip the provider, it will only create the user model for us, which is this user model.dart file. And last but not least, you can also install and remove the third-party library using the get command interface. If you want to install the third-party library, you can use this get install HTTP, which will install the HTTP package for you. So you see, I run this command. You'll run this Flutter Package. Basically, you will do the same thing if we specify this HTTP in our PubCB YAML file, and you will see, and you will automatically include this HTTP package for us. And you can also remove by running this get remove command. So I'm going to try. So I'm going to remove this HTTP package. It indicates we have successfully removed our HTTP package, and you see it will automatically remove the dependency for you inside this pub/cbc YAML file. Okay, I think that's all for today's lesson, and we talk about the command line interface using the GetX CLI package, and also we talk about the GetX pattern, how to create your project, follow the best practice to separate your view, your business logic, and your module. This will be our last video talking about GetX package, and next I'm going to create a completely Flutter application using this GetX package and follow the best practice, which is this GetX pattern. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video.